Hello, listeners. Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network. So, everyone is talking about AI these days, but not enough people are taking the time to unpack how AI will impact the future of higher education. And that's why we launched the Generation AI podcast, co-hosted by Ardis Kadiu, CEO of Element451, and JC Bonilla, Chief Data Officer at VaynerMedia. Ardis and JC have worked on large language models for nearly 2 decades and have remarkable technical knowledge around how they work and how generative AI will impact the future of higher ed. Generation AI isn't just about understanding artificial intelligence, it's about being part of the AI revolution in education. Tune in, get informed, and be inspired to innovate in your educational space with the power of artificial intelligence. You can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Generation AI wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, a podcast that empowers higher ed marketers to bring innovation, creativity, and excellence to their work. I'm your host, Jaime Hunt. Join me every 2 weeks for discussions with some of the best minds in higher education marketing. Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher educational professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. So I'm happy to be here talking to Ardis a little bit about Bolt AI and the AI Air Show that's happening later in April. Ardis, can you tell me a little bit about the Air Show? I know when you posted about it, I was just absolutely filled with jealousy because it looks amazing.
Hey, Jamie, good to be here. The Air Show, it's part of ASU GSV. ASU GSV stands for Arizona State University and Global Silicon Valley Ventures. They have been doing a summit for the future of education, where they bring in all the leaders from the institution side, from the companies that are leading higher education ed tech, and then thought leadership as well. So over the past few years, the summit has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And last year, it was all about AI. A lot of the sessions were AI were filled in. So what they did this year, they said, you know what, we have a lot of companies and a lot of kind of thought leadership around AI. So we're going to have what they call the Air Show, the ASU GSV Air Show. And it's going to be 2 days before the summit. And it's a collection of talks, all specifically on AI, presentations from different companies, thought leadership, but it's only going to be focused on AI. So they felt like they needed a separate conference to kind of focus on AI first, which is really incredible. So looking forward to it. I was at ASU GSV last year, and it was just incredible. I think they had 7,000 or 8,000 people at the conference.
Wow. ASU is just doing some tremendous things. I feel really fortunate. I get to take a tour of their AI lab space when I'm on their campus, actually right before the conference. So I'll be there, I think, the 11th and 12th.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. The fellowship that I'm doing is with ASU and Georgetown, and we were offered the opportunity to do this tour, and we have to get up a little early to go do it. And I was like, I absolutely have to do this and see this. So I bet the show is going to be absolutely incredible. And that's a ton of people dedicated to AI. It's all around AI specifically in education, which is just even more amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of K through 12. So there's a lot around teaching and learning. So when you look at the innovation and companies that are kind of coming up, there's a lot of them. I would say about 60 or 70% or even more are focusing on the teaching and learning component of AI, which is what we're hearing a lot from campuses right now. But very few are focusing on the kind of the productivity and the student experience side, which is, which is unfortunate. But hey, we're lucky that we don't have a lot of competition in that space, so that's good.
right? Element451 has certainly risen, I think, as a huge leader in this space. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I think you're unveiling a new AI assistant at the air show. Is that correct?
We are, yeah. Yeah. So, over the past year, we've been working a lot on kind of this idea of generative AI for conversational interfaces. And we announced it last year during around this time, our Bolt bot. And that's for students, Q&A on the student side for kind of this conversational chatbot, multi-channel. And then we unveiled what we called Bolt Copilot on the administrative side to help administrators with things like writing, copywriting, full campaigns in a lot of cases. So yes, now we are bringing all of those together. And as we're building more capabilities on either side, the idea is like, well, this doesn't make sense to be kind of a separate thing. We need to bring it all together under the umbrella of AI assistants because they're evolving and they're becoming a lot more than just a bot, right?
Well, yeah, because chatbots and sort of AI-enabled chatbots have been around for a number of years now, but this sounds like it's just so much more sophisticated with the evolution of AI over the past couple of years. But before we really dig into the bot and AI assistants, can you tell me what you think some of the biggest problems are facing higher education institutions when it comes to helping students be successful?
Yeah, so right now, one of the things that, if you look at the literature all over, there is a level of confidence in higher education, both from the experience and the, I'll say, affordability or the confidence that higher education is worth it. I'm going to go to school for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and I'm actually going to get something, beneficial out of it. And that erosion is, accelerating. So you look at it from a customer success perspective and you start thinking, okay, how can I make this experience better? We don't have a lot of staff, in our institutions. Like the brain drain, so to speak, has happened for quite a while now, and it's even accelerating. We have so many people getting out of higher education rather than coming into it. So you have these two things. The consumer, which is the student, is expecting more and better experiences. You don't have enough resources and staff. So that expectation and that kind of divide is getting bigger and bigger and bigger for a lot of schools. And that's what we see every single day. We see, they want to do the right thing, but they just don't have the resources. They don't have the know-how. And then students are saying, why am I not getting a phone call right away? Why am I waiting, a week to talk to somebody? Why can't I schedule an appointment when I'm in my couch at night? Why do I need to go in person to schedule an academic advisor and I have to wait on the faculty member? So all of these things are barriers to that customer experience or that student experience that we're seeing every single day.
And how do you think a Bolt AI assistant would help solve some of those problems?
So there's two things, right? When as a marketer, as a chief marketing officer, you know that kind of the ultimate goal of consumer marketing is how can I deliver the right message, the right time at the right person, right? So you're kind of going to that personalization, a segment of one. So when you start thinking about it, it's like, okay, first you need to understand what the consumer needs to do and what they're all about. And then second, I need to deliver the right message. The content needs to be the right content and personalize it at that level. And the multi-channel, right? I got to do it in different channels. So until now, we haven't really found a way to multiply that content creation. So we could have some things around knowing the consumer, but until now, we couldn't deliver it, right? We couldn't deliver that personalization. But imagine now where AI can create personalized content at the time that the message needs to go out for that specific student. So rather than you pre-building campaigns or pre-building content, you're creating real-time personalized content, that being audio, video, even text or campaigns, emails, text messages in real time as the message goes out specifically for that student, specifically in the context of that particular interaction that they have. So that's what we're building.
That is absolutely mind-blowingly exciting for me as a CMO. Like just thinking about having that kind of tool that would allow me to do that and serve our audiences that much better. And I feel like it's much more in alignment with what they experience when they deal with other companies, other interactions that they have in their daily lives. And I think in higher ed, we forget That we're not competing with the school down the road. We're competing with everything else in their lives. And everybody else is on this bandwagon.
All the other brands. Yeah, exactly. So it's the attention. I mean, they call it the attention economy, right? There's a reason for that. And the reason is that you only have 24 hours, maybe 8 hours or 9 hours of those are taken away. So you have a set amount of hours. And what was the biggest unlock when mobile phones came around was that now you got not just the TV time or the internet time that you were sitting in front of a computer, but now you have it unlocked 2 times, 3 times the amount of time that you can be getting their attention. So that was huge for marketers. But you need to produce a lot of content, and personalization became really important. That's why social media became so effective in reaching people, was because you unlocked all this time and they were really, really good about just hitting you up on that attention. So now, okay, they're expecting the same things from a lot of different brands, institutions being one of those brands. And in some cases, it's the most expensive brand that they're putting their resources towards.
Right.
So it's like, well, how do you think about it? You get free, really, really good engagement from a Facebook or TikTok or some of these free brands, but then it's like you're paying $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 a year for your education, and you can't get somebody on the phone.
Right. It's all, 8 to 4:30 or whatever. And
exactly.
Somebody goes on vacation, you have to wait till they get back, or God forbid they resign and you have to wait 6 months for somebody new to be hired and wait for that. But, you talked a little bit earlier about how this is an evolution from chatbots. Can you talk a little bit more about how an AI assistant is different from a chatbot?
Yeah. So there's actually multiple types of chatbots. We talk about BC, as in before ChatGPT era chatbots, which were rule-based and, yes, they had some internal kind of, we'll call it AI, but some internal if this, then that, or rule-based, tree-based answer question and answers. But then after ChatGPT, we got the large language models with very frontier models. They were very conversational. So now we're able to build conversations on top of that. And we were able to kind of combine and put constraints around the knowledge and what they were able to tell you because we had knowledge bases. So this idea of chatbots having a set of knowledge and being conversational, that was AC after ChatGPT. So now when you have a chatbot, it can answer questions for you based on a particular knowledge base. But if you ask it to actually do something and say, okay, can you schedule that appointment for me? If you ask it, hey, I'm really interested in this class, or I'm interested in applying, but I have a couple of questions. Maybe I can't get those questions from the bot, but I need to schedule an appointment with my advisor. And now it goes ahead and the bot can schedule those appointments for you. However, students aren't just interacting in the context of an academic setting or in academic work. They're also interacting in the context of, let's say, an admissions process. And that's where you need a different team member or a different kind of persona that is more kind of admissions driven, family, towards family, talks a little bit more about the institution's brand, and it's kind of more aligned towards that, very similar to an admissions counselor. But then you move away and you're like, okay, I also need questions about athletics. So now you move completely and you're like, okay, I need more of a coach, athletic persona, and they have access to different pieces of information, right? So now you take that notion and you start integrating them into what we call this AI assistants, where you have a persona or you have an assistant for each one of the functions that are happening on campus. And it doesn't have to be just on the student side, but it's also on the administrative side. So essentially, you can say, I have a CMO AI assistant, a Chief Marketing Officer assistant. I have a campaign assistant. I have a copywriter. I have a designer assistant. So all of these assistants are helping and personifying. They have a persona, they have skills that they can do, they have knowledge that they can access. And that's the evolution from the chatbot, where we're just able to answer questions and answers, to now moving where they can have skills, and those skills can be grouped into context and have context and personality. So now we're interacting with them just like we're interacting with a human. And they can do handoff between one and the other. So a task they don't have to know everything. They can just hand it over to the next one, to the next one, or have a combination of them all working together.
This sounds incredibly useful, but also incredibly intensive to implement. What's the implementation process look like for this product?
So we've actually built all these personas. So when you come on, all you have to do, because they share the same knowledge base infrastructure, you can just point it to your website or other data sources, and it will ingest all of that knowledge. And then now it will also have access to all of the Element kind of CRM and tools underneath. So all you have to do is point it to your website and just embed the assistance kind of code to your website or any other kind of web property that you need.
What a time to be alive. Like to have something
Yeah.
that's like this sophisticated be like, oh, you just give it this thing and now it works. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. As someone who like used to hand code websites in HTML, like I'm so excited to be alive to get to see all of these changes. One of the things you mentioned was, having it interact with people in a sort of a human way. What would you say to the people who are concerned about it replacing human interactions? And how does a tool like a bot AI assistant work with people, basically?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a concern for a long time, right? It's like, how am I secure in my job? Anytime something comes along, it's like, is my job going to be replaced? And I forgot what it was. There was somebody the other day who mentioned they had two positions on staff where their sole job is, because the system wasn't able to provide a digital receipt to a student. They had two people basically printing out a receipt, scanning it, and then uploading that receipt and then emailing it to that student. And that was their sole job. And I'm like, okay, so now you can take that. If you replace it with where the system can generate that receipt, that you can just take that person and say, okay, you can now be in front of the students, right? You can be in front of the customer, because that's the highest bandwidth. So our jobs, we're not replacing jobs. It's just that we're filling in a gap where you're coexisting and augmenting. These AI assistants are basically assisting and augmenting your capabilities. So you're working alongside it, and they're taking all the menial tasks and the tasks that are repetitive and so on and so forth. And now you have more time to actually do higher bandwidth or higher value tasks, talking to the customers and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I always tell people you get to have more time to be creative and to have more ingenuity. Like you now have more time to be innovative and to think and to do things that maybe you didn't have the bandwidth or the time to do before because you were doing these other types of tasks. But when I was reading kind of the description of these AI assistants, you have a wide range of different types of AI assistants. Can you tell me a little bit about those?
Yeah. So right now we have, from the student side, we have a whole bunch of assistants that are, working on that student journey. We talked about, let's say, a admissions counselor assistant. We talked like we can have, then that admissions counselor has access to the admissions process, your application skills. He can kind of tell you what you're missing, all of the things that you need to do on that. So, and then also it can be very friendly and guide you through that process. You can have an academic advisor, which has access to the course catalog. It understands what courses you're taking, and it knows like prerequisites, co-requisites, and can give you different kind of recommendations based on what you need to take next or what you're currently taking right now. Like a career coach. Sometimes we're missing a lot of those. So that's another one where it can go back and offer kind of personalized advice to help you land maybe a job, or as you go later in your senior year, maybe a support peer. So sometimes we just want to talk to another peer on the other side, and students are, they have a hard time making friends or perhaps talking to a peer. So having a peer like bot where it can go and say, hey, here's all the things that you might want to try, or here's all the things, here's how you can overcome this and that. So that's another one from the student side. An athletic advisor as well, or athletic coach rather, where knows all about the sports at that school and talks to you in a very different way. And then from the staff side, for tasks or things that need to be done, think about it as the design assistant, we were just giving a demo to our internal team today of some of these assistants. And we said, hey, here's all the media library. We've gone in and we've used AI to describe and to create a corpus of descriptions via AI of all of these different images that you have in there. And now we can use our design assistants to recommend and to place images for the right emails to say, hey, okay, here's the content of this email. The copywriter assistant writes it. The design assistants can say, okay, based on the topic of that, I'm going to go in and pull the right images from the media library that I have and then insert it for you in the email designer. So those are kind of, just a few of them. Of course, there's more in there, like a data analyst, or we talked about copywriter, a full campaign strategy. So like you can write a 20, 30 email sequence, email and SMS sequence, and you'll orchestrate, keep a really good flow of that particular campaign for you. Because sometimes one of the hardest things that we had was when you're designing, when you're pulling all these campaigns together, you can go like very early on ChatGPT, I created a lot of these mega prompts to do that. But then one of the things that was really hard is like, okay, once you start getting longer and longer types of communications, and after like 3 or 4 different emails or SMS messages, it just loses that thread, right? So we had to do a lot of work where now we can make sure that we're creating the outlines, we're going one by one and then pulling the outlines together. So it's like, think about it like a real person, like you're creating this really large broad stroke, and then you're refining it. And then you have other helpers to kind of go in and refine that even further. So anyway, so that's been really fun into like, how do I take a job that an expert would do, and how can we map that into a process that AI can help us do a lot faster?
Yeah. My husband did a series of prompt designs to kind of get that sort of, I need like a whole comms flow for a project, and like getting all those prompts. But you're right, like there is a certain point where it kind of loses the thread and it gets distracted. But the one that you mentioned, the design assistant combing through photos and making recommendations, the amount of hours I have spent in my career over the last 20 years going through photo databases and trying to find a photo that would fit something. If I could have every minute of that back, I'd be like 20 years younger than I am right now. That alone, I feel like would be an amazing asset for a marketer.
Yeah. And these CRMs, I mean, CMSs like WordPress and even Drupal, like they didn't have the best media, libraries. It's like you had to,
Right.
Not the best media design. So you're lucky if you have Digital Asset Manager, as you kind of have some tagging or some stuff like that for sure.
Yeah. At a previous institution, we put a lot of effort into having a tagging syntax and, making sure everything was organized and structured. But that is the only time in my career that I have ever had where it can take me just a few minutes to find the photos, because everything else has been like, well, let's see if this photo from 2022 graduation, let's see if there's any photos of a graduate with their parents in this folder. It's awful.
Jimmy, what's really cool is like, as we're trying this brand new stuff, right? We're like, we're amazed ourselves at how good some of these, results are. We have an image, and it's a banner image, and it has text in there. It has a year. It has the person next to it. So it's really like a designer image that somebody has uploaded, and it's able to describe everything, including the OCR of the text and the colors. And because we told it, provide me also use cases of how I can use this image in a higher education setting for marketing, it's able to then append all of that in the description itself. So now when you search for it, you can search by use case and you can search by content as well, which is really, really interesting.
Take all my money. That's amazing. That's amazing. So it sounds like you have all these, AI assistants that can help with a whole bunch of different business processes, not just in necessarily the marketing office, but also advising and other offices. How do you recommend that a campus kind of get everybody on the same page to implement something like this? Or do you allow universities to kind of pick and choose what fits for their campus?
Higher ed is not known for fast adoption. We lag behind quite a
No, no.
So one of the things that we've been trying to do is a lot of education around like, how do you do AI literacy for campus? And showing a lot of these things, because when you see it, then you believe it. I was giving a workshop this past Friday at a large state institution here in North Carolina, and there was about 20 or so folks from the admissions and enrollment offices. And we're going through the use cases of AI and everything else. And then they have an older chatbot in their website. And, the night before I had gone in and just loaded all their catalog into our AI assistants. And then now we went side by side and I asked it very simple questions. How many programs does the institution have? And the other bot was like, well, it just wasn't doing anything. And the other one, like our bot, because it knows everything, it was able to give me that question right away. But then folks starting to ask, it's no. How about can we ask it about poultry science? I'm like, what? I don't know anything about poultry science. So we started asking about poultry science. Forget about the other bot. The other bot wasn't even able to answer any of that question. But they really got into it. And it started answering questions about poultry science. And we had a French-speaking person, and we switched the language, and I was answering in different languages.
Wow.
So them seeing what it's able to do, now they're able to go back and have those conversations. But it was really important that their leaders actually had me on campus in order to showcase and teach the staff what are the opportunities, right? So it's not everywhere that you see that. A lot of leaders in institutions, they're maybe insecure, or they just want things locked down. So they're not opening up their staff to kind of have AI literacy. So I think AI literacy is going to be the biggest kind of change that needs to happen. And, at the end of the day, it's like if the leaders are not aligned and don't learn this stuff themselves, it's going to be very hard for kind of a bottom-up approach, because it's tough, right? It's tough.
I have a lot of leaders who listen to this podcast. And if there's just one thing you take away, it's that literacy piece is so, like, we can't stop learning. Like when the internet came out, the CMOs, which let's set aside the fact that there weren't a lot of higher ed CMOs when the internet came out, but, anybody who was like, I'm just going to continue to fax press releases. I don't need to be using email or whatever. That became almost a joke. It became, you're like a dinosaur. You're not up to speed. Even if you are not actively using AI, which, what are you doing? Please use it. But even if you're not using it yourself, get that literacy, get that understanding so that you can support your team and help drive your team toward innovation, toward getting your institution to be more on the cutting edge. Because I'm pretty convinced that the schools that are going to be successful in 5-10 years are going to be the ones that get this right. Because as we get this right, students are going to be better served. You're going to see greater retention rates. You're going to see students kind of flock to the institutions that offer these types of tools and these types of opportunities. And you're going to see the schools that aren't as continue to flounder. Because at the end of the day, no matter what we do as marketers, it's that word of mouth. It's that, the experience that our students are having, that they're sharing with the people they know. And if they're like, look at this super cool thing that I'm doing on my campus, that's going to pique interest so much more than any brochure or flyer or email or text message we send out as marketers. Like, there's an authenticity there. And if we're not getting on the bandwagon for this, I think we're going to be in real trouble.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, it all starts with the leadership, and we're going to see a huge divide between those who have and those who haven't because of that. And the acceleration of those who have is going to be even further apart. So forget about small institutions like vying for the same resources. It's just going to be really, really interesting, at least from where we sit, to see it. We're not on the institution side, but we're going to be working with a lot of them, and it's not going to be pretty if we kind of have the same rejection or the same pushback that we had in the early days of social media or kind of the internet and so on and so forth.
Yeah. For higher ed leaders and staff listening, what would you recommend be some first steps that they can take to learn more about how AI assistants can help them and to get that literacy that they need to get their schools ready for this big change that's honestly already happening?
Yeah. So, just start learning more about AI overall. Start learning about the use cases and how these things can be used on campus. the light bulbs go off once you see one or two or three different use cases, but also learn how to use or start using AI yourself, right? Start using some of the generative AI tools like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. Start using it in your day-to-day work, because you got to build that muscle, and then now you intuitively understand and can start putting into your own. But this is a very different way of thinking about how you interact with software and how you bring in AI as a piece of software, as a capability, as a tool to your day-to-day work. So as the tools are evolving, we no longer need to think about, oh, I need to do really, really good prompt engineering. Sure, you need to do that, but that's if you're using the general models or the general chatbots that don't have the context of your school, the language, and all those. The way we're going is that software is going to be packaged in these AI assistants. So when you buy something, when you buy a piece of software, you're going to start thinking about capabilities of that and how they can help you, rather than, kind of configuration and kind of learning. So AI right now, we're seeing it all through the prompt engineering aspect of the world. So yes, I have a prompt engineering course, and over the past year, we had a lot of folks who've gone through it. But that's going to be here for maybe just the next year or so. And as we start rolling out, these types of AI assistants or AI agents, if you want a different name for it, like probably this AI agents is kind of the more general term that some more software products are using, but it's going to be packaged all in one into this. So start using some of these tools today so you understand how they can accelerate the day-to-day work, and just attend as many conferences, events, and start thinking about this in a more holistic way, rather than very specific to like a teaching and learning or to maybe just email writing. So start thinking about these as kind of a brain or an assistance that are helping you with different types of workflows. So changing that mindset. That's a lot in there, but hopefully that's
One of the things that you said made me wonder. So you mentioned, prompt engineering not necessarily being a long-term thing that somebody needs to know. Did I get that right? That's kind of what you're...
Yeah.
So do you think prompt engineering is going to be a little bit like knowing HTML? I know look, I haven't used HTML in quite a while, but I know HTML. I don't use it. I don't need to use it. I can build a website without HTML at this point, but I find it helpful to have known HTML when I am working, even with WYSIWYG editors and stuff like that. Do you see that same sort of thing happening with prompt engineering?
Absolutely, 100%. So right now, if you want really good output, so if you want really nice looking, landing pages and websites, you have to know HTML and CSS and all the tricks, or otherwise your site falls apart. But then frameworks have been built on top of those, and then systems and platforms like WordPress and Drupal and all that stuff came along. You still needed to be technical to set up those things. But then, Squarespace came along, and now you're like, just hit the button. Actually, Squarespace designers came along, and now you can look really great with your branding, and the Webflow came along, and now you don't even touch the HTML anymore, so you don't have access to it. So that's the evolution that we're seeing here, but a lot faster. So you're not going to need prompt engineering anymore. You essentially can write in a very short, concise way, and then the systems or the software is actually doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes to add the context, to add the writing style and everything else in order for it to get. You probably have seen this a little bit with DALL-E, if you generated any images with there. So what they do behind the scenes is they take your prompt or they take your description of that image, and then now when you get an image back, you can see it being expanded into this crazy prompt and you're like, I didn't do that. All I wrote is 3 words in there.
Right.
So it's the same thing, right? So we're starting to move towards that, where you don't need to know prompt engineering anymore. You can just be very simple text inputs. Some software has moved away from like what they're doing is they're actually moving not just the text, but they're also saying, you know what? Not everything is going to be typing all the text in, but it's going to be a combination of interacting with some UI and some text, because the clicking a button or selecting something might be a lot faster input. So it's this combination that's becoming more and more relevant, and all of that goes through the same kind of reasoning engine on these large language models in order to get us very fuzzy, understanding of how we can work without being very precise.
I just love to be alive during this time. Like, I just think this is so transformative. Ardis, is there anything else you want to mention about AI assistants before we wrap?
No, this has been great. Thanks for great questions. We talk a lot about this stuff in my podcast, Generation AI, and we get a little geekier there. So we dive into a little bit more into some of the, the science and some of the technology behind it. But if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach me at ardis@element451.com, or go and kind of subscribe to my other podcast on the Enrollify Podcasts Network, generationaishow.com.
That's awesome. And as always, listeners, you can find me at LinkedIn at Jaime Hunt, JaimeHunt, and on TikTok at The Higher Ed CMO. I'm always happy to connect and chat, always happy to kind of inspire you, hopefully, to explore AI and what generative AI can do for you. And I think that there's probably nothing better at busting silos than AI. So let's go use some AI to bust silos. Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry best as your host. Learn from Mallory Wilsey, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Eddie Francis, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.